I'm an electronics engineering professor, and at this point in time, a lot of my focus is on working closely with industry to commercialize technology.
My research is in the areas of looking at designing catalysts for sustainability. My background is chemical engineering, and my passion is to harvest sun energy.
My main area of work is as an allied health professional myself. Is in translation of research, especially falls prevention in older people.
Leading one of the sub-projects within the ARC Hub for Integrated Energy Storage Solutions. I'm also a joint director of the Collaboration on Energy and Environmental Markets at UNSW.
I'm interested in getting to the bottom of some of your personal experiences that have shaped and motivated you.
So I was particularly really excited by the potential for solar to provide clean energy, but also to provide energy for people in remote areas and in developing countries who didn't otherwise have access to energy.
I really felt that through running clinical trials, designing programs, consumer design is essential as part of what I do, that I could really make a difference in a much larger way than I could ever do in a clinical practice.
In high school, I always liked chemistry, physics, and maths, and therefore that since high school, I always wanted to be an engineer, but I'm not sure what engineer is. But because of my passion in chemistry, so I chose chemical engineering. And I think throughout my career, sustainability is always the key to it. When I finished my bachelor degree, and sometimes when we sort of go out there, people sort of say, "Oh, chemical engineer is dirty." You produce a lot of waste, the chemical industry, and I sort of say to them, we are the one who's going to treat the waste to make sure it's clean to go to the environment as well.
It's, I think, the curiosity around miniaturization of electronics which kind of drove me to become an engineer. I chose to do electronics engineering, and I came here to do a master's back in 2004. And back then my focus was just, let's do the master's, let's learn how to do the hardware and things like that, and then go back to India and get a job. But I think, similar to Kim, I kind of went into the lab, did a project, wore a clean room bunny suit for the first time, made my own electronic devices, and it just completely inspired me to stick around and do research and continue and take this pathway in terms of that humanitarian engineering aspect, driving a lot of impact, as well as driving the careers for a lot of women and their choices which they make. The world needs more engineers, and the world needs more women engineers, no doubt about it.
Is there any particular career shaping advice that you've received that has really shaped the way that you have transitioned within your career?
My PhD supervisor is Professor Judy Raper, who's also female, and I think there's a lot of things that I learned from her. She's a role model to me. She's sort of in terms of work-life balance as well. Build your personal brand as well, your uniqueness, looking at your strength and how to cultivate it, because each of us have the strength and make it sort of unique. Collaborators. The network with others as well, and it is important because you sort of learn from each other. Sometimes we feel like we are competitor when we're working in the same field, but at the same time we learn from them as well.
I also had a female PhD supervisor and also other colleagues as well in our group that I think as well as focusing on your strengths, also really set the example of pursuing what you think is valuable and important as well. So I think sometimes as an academic you can get a little bit stuck in sort of trying to hit the KPIs of publishing journal papers or whatever, those kinds of things, but actually being an academic and being a scientist, there's opportunities to have a much broader impact.
You're so focused on those research methods and making sure the clinical trials are done the right way, the systematic reviews, and you kind of, it's a lot to take in, and you might lose touch with what the world actually needs. And that was an advice that I received from a clinician, was to make sure that I stepped out of my research bubble.
And I think from Rose, Anna and Kim, the old saying that if you want to go fast, you go alone, and if you want to go far, you go together, is something that particularly as women we need to continue to support and build up one another as well. Madhu, any pieces of advice that haven't already been mentioned?
a bit of a different one, which is if you don't ask, the answer is always no. Because that's one of the pieces of advice. I think it's kind of maybe a self-defined piece of advice in some ways, because a lot of opportunities I've realized I wouldn't be here and I wouldn't really be where I am if I had not taken that initiative and just asked that question.
So we've had a lot of sort of empowering discussions of where we're at. I'm curious to maybe look at some of the challenges that we've faced, and if you have encountered any specific challenges related to traits about yourself that you have no influence over, such as your gender or your background.
I come in engineering, which is extremely male dominated, but I guess the beauty in engineering is we are heavily we have a lot of migrants over there. So, it's not really home to one particular kind of person. And that kind of some ways makes it a bit more inclusive, especially in academia, because there's just so many of us who come from different parts of the world. It's possibly when I took my maternity break and went away, had my child and came back, and coming back into a workforce where, you don't have people to share that experience with. You don't have people to give you advice on how to navigate this new space of, the so-called work-life balance. Like I went away on maternity leave, came back to the same stack of papers, which were still left on my thing for me to keep continuing on. Your PhD students don't leave, they're still there. Their candidature has to keep going. We need to have a network of women who can rally around each other, be each other's cheerleaders and share those stories. Probably the other point where I felt a bit more different or maybe disadvantaged in some ways is trying to grow into leadership positions, because you think differently, you operate differently, you speak differently, you come from a different culture. The system needs to be appreciative of all differences and diversity and much more inclusive. It's not so much fixing the women to operate a certain specific way so that they fit in. It's a bit funny because on one side you're preaching authenticity and on the other side you're trying to mold everyone to fit into a particular mold.
I had no role model within my direct manager before that I actually could relate with, even though I had wonderful male managers. Absolutely nothing towards them, but I had a different style. As a woman, I feel we are too much we are mothers of our own teams sometimes, and that is not, it can be helpful, but it's not always. As women, we do it different, and I feel like we, in a way, I don't know what the better way is, but that is something that I challenged. That was my challenge, I think, a few years ago, and maybe it is ongoing in finding that right way to manage a team. Being supportive, having the balance, supporting everyone while they're on maternity leave or have other challenges happening, while being fair for others. And I feel as women, we sometimes put too much of that responsibility on us.
So I do teaching and research, and I really felt like I came back to full-time really quickly. And I felt like I couldn't be part-time, because if I was part-time, I would just be using all my time doing my teaching and being, on committees and service things, and I wouldn't have any time for research.
When I first joined ETSI, in terms of the committee, I'm the only one that looked like, the only one with black hair and females and so on. But that it's good because they sort of as long as you present yourself, you don't have to change the way you dress, Emma, and then everything. As long as you sort of be yourself and tell them what and contribute, they really sort of respect. I think respect is sort of two ways, and I found that maybe I'm lucky that I think that the traits that I have, it seems to be an opportunities.
If you were given infinite time and infinite resources, where would you focus your energy on and why?
More my passions. I think I sort of alluded at beginning, education. I think this is very critical. I mean, without education, I will not be here today. So if I have this, infinite resources and time, I think that's the things I would like to invest into sort of giving more equity to girls, and this is not just university, but primary school. Give them the education, get the opportunity to be able to experience that, because that is their future. Without education, they don't have no future. So it is important.
If I had just unlimited time, I would be, you know, much more down in the weeds with, I guess, both research and teaching, like, you know, being face to face. And if I could run all the tutorials and, you know, be really engaged with the students, and if I could, you know, be more, you know, actually doing the modelling and coding and things and get my hands dirty in that way, then that would be pretty cool.
The one thing that I think is very hard, like especially if you love what you do, is to take a break. And if we take a break now, like, you just know that you almost like stress yourself out to get as much done as you can before you take your break, knowing that as soon as you come back, there will be 3 times as much that you just got rid of. And if there would be any way for that not to happen, I think that would be a dream of everyone in a managing role.
My answer is kind of similar to Rose. It's basically accelerate change. And I guess that accelerating change can be either in the form of technology to benefit humankind, or, you know, change which is much more harder to accelerate, which is possibly around the diversity and inclusion piece, because it's a culture change. But yeah, would love to do both of that.
As females in STEM fields, do you have any advice or suggestions to younger female researchers who are just starting their career? And how do you deal with the stress if you come across any difficulties in your career? And I might change that if to when you come across difficulties.
Females like miss out on a bit in their school and their and just in general, there's assumptions and maybe they're just not given those opportunities. So I think even though you might feel like a bit of an imposter or whatever, just put your hand up for those opportunities to get hands-on and to do the technical things.
I am very organized, and I think that is a strength, but it's also a coping mechanism. Anyone who has worked with me will know that I hate last-minute things, and the reason why is because it throws everything off, and it doesn't. It makes you not meet other deadlines. There is a grant coming in 2 months. I'll start working. If it's finished early, I'll finish. You know, don't keep lingering onto it and keep revising, and just do the work, do it well, do it straight away.
If you got stressed, one other thing is find those colleagues that you can talk to as well. And sometimes when there are issues, it's better that when they are small, because I always say small issues much easier to be solved rather than when it's becoming big and explode. So even when the issues are small, talk to those colleagues and find those colleagues. There are quite a lot out there, and see how they can help. Some of them are maybe, you know, it's the same level colleagues. Some of them might be a senior colleague. Sometimes talk through that. You know, you know that there is a way out from that as well.
You know, say yes to everything early in your career, so that you can grab all those opportunities, build all those networks, and then there will come a point in your career where you have to start saying no, and then you'll start saying no to exactly all those things which don't spark joy because you've already done it and you don't like it, or, you know, you just know exactly what to grab onto afterwards. So there are stages in our career when we have sometimes infinite time, as you put it earlier, because you don't have, you know, family responsibilities. Maximize it at that point, because slowly, you know, things build on and keep adding onto your plate, and at that time it really helps to have that network of people around you, as Rose put it, those time management skills well in place, as Kim put it, and that's just the way, you know, you can keep strategizing yourself to success.